What's going on, guys? Sharpshot here. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. So for today's video, we're going to be answering the question of what DBD DLC you should buy first in 2022. With the new Resident Evil Project W chapter just releasing, and there currently being a 50% off sale on all of the DLCs at the time of this recording, and on top of the fact that I haven't done this video in over a year, I thought this was the perfect time to relook at the DLCs. So I'm going to be breaking this video down into 4 categories. The first category is going to be for everybody. This is the DLC that everybody should buy first. The second category is going to be the DLC for the survivor mains. The third category is going to be the DLC for the killer mains. Finally, the fourth category is going to be for the players who play both killer and survivor a little bit equally and what DLC they should get. And for each category, I'm going to be listing 3 DLCs in order of which you should buy first. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the video. So the first DLC I recommend everybody get first is the Spark of Madness chapter. This DLC contains Doctor for the killer and then Fang Min for the survivor. And the reason I recommend everybody get this first is because it's a fantastic beginner DLC. Whether you're a survivor or a killer main, both characters in the Doctor and Fang Min are awesome for both sides. Doctor is a great beginner killer that's easy to use, and his power is relatively good for how easy he is to use. And he also gets you a ton of blood points while you use him with his power, so it's great for grinding blood points as well. Fang Min has one of the best exhaustion perks in the game in life, and her other 2 perks are relatively pretty good as well when you're starting out. Just to quickly summarize Doctor's power, it's called the Carter's Spark. He has 2 special abilities that come with it. The first is the shock therapy, where you basically shock survivors and inflict the madness status effect. And his second power is called the static blast, where you let off a huge shock blast at the size of your terror radius that'll reveal any survivors that get shocked and also inflict madness. The more madness you inflict on a survivor, the higher up they get into the tiers, the worse the effects on the survivors get. He also has 3 relatively decent perks, with Overcharge probably being the best perk of the 3. Moving on to Fang Min, as I said before, the best perk out of these 3 is Lithe, which is an exhaustion perk that allows you to gain a sprint burst every time you vault a window or a pallet, and it's basically a controllable and activatable sprint burst. And Alert is a really good information perk, and Technician is really good if you struggle with skill checks starting out. So for everybody now, your second and third DLC should be 1 or 2 of the DLCs from the category that fits you, so just keep watching the video to find the DLCs for you. So for the survivor mains, the first DLC you should get is the Hour of the Witch chapter. This is actually a paragraph, which means that it only contains 1 character, and that happens to be the survivor Michaela Reed. Michaela has 3 great teachables, but her main selling point is having the best healing perk in the game in Boon Circle of Healing. You and all of your teammates can heal yourselves inside of the Boon Totem range, which just keeps everybody in the trial healthy and efficient, because whenever they get injured, they can just go to the Boon and heal themselves really quickly. And Clairvoyance is another really good information perk. Whenever you cleanse a totem, you get to see the aura of a bunch of things whenever you read their aura. So it's basically like a portable map whenever you cleanse a totem. And finally, Boon Shadow Step is probably the second best boon in my opinion, where whenever you're looping inside of that range, the scratch marks and your aura are suppressed to the killer, so it makes you super hard to track inside that aura. The second DLC I recommend you get is the Chains of Hate chapter. The survivor in this chapter is Zarina, and it also comes with the killer Deathslinger. Zarina's 3 teachables aren't the best, but the main selling point is Off the Record, which is the best non-exhaustion perk in the game. With this perk, you have an 80-second borrowed time every time you get unhooked. The endurance status effect you get does deactivate on conspicuous actions, but you also get a built-in Iron Will and Distortion for that 80 seconds as well. So you're going to be really stealthy and have an extra hit every time you get unhooked. For the people, it's probably your second best perk, and it's a really fun, high risk, high altruism perk where you give your health state to another survivor instantly. So it can be really clutch if that survivor is in the dying state. It's a really risky perk, so be careful with it. And Red Herring isn't a great perk. I wouldn't really recommend using it. And then to quickly talk about Deathslinger, his power is a gun with a reel-in mechanic where you shoot a survivor, and if you hit them, you can reel them in closer to you to then actually hit them. So if you're really accurate mechanically and you can hit your shots pretty consistently, he can be an actually pretty strong killer. But his main selling point, in my opinion, are his perks, especially Deadman Switch. Deadman Switch is probably one one of the best killer perks in the game at the moment, where every time you hook a survivor, this perk activates for 30 seconds, and anybody leaving a gen that they're working on within that 30 seconds, that gen gets blocked for the remainder of that 30 seconds, and then that generator gets highlighted in white so that you know that gen just got let go. So it's a really good gen defense perk that you can consistently get value out of every hook. And then Retribution is probably the second best perk, where it gives you decent information every time the survivors interact with totems. And then I wouldn't really use Gearhead, but it's an information perk nonetheless. The third DLC I recommend you get is the Curtain Call chapter. This DLC includes the survivor Kate Denson and the killer The Clown. Kate has 3 relatively decent perks, but Windows of Opportunity is probably her best one. And this is a fantastic beginner perk where it allows you to see all of the windows and pallets around you in a chase. So it'll give you an idea of where you should be looping and not being lost in chases. Another good loop perk she has is Dance With Me, where whenever you vault a window or pallet or you leave a locker, it won't leave scratch marks for the next 3 seconds, and you zoom away with no scratch marks, you'll be really hard to track. And then Boil Over is a wiggling out perk, where whenever you get carried by the killer, your wiggle effects are stronger, and the killer also can't see the hooks near them. So this perk will give you a good amount of wiggle outs now and then. And then just to quickly talk about the Clown, I personally think he's a good killer. I know a lot of people don't think he is, but his power is basically throwing these pink bottles or yellow bottles on the ground. The pink bottles, whenever a survivor steps in them, slows them down, and the yellow bottles, whenever anybody steps in them, speeds them up. So he's a really big anti-loop killer with blocking loops in areas with the pink bottles and slowing survivors down and catching up to them super easily. And he has 3 actually pretty decent killer perks, with the best one being Pop. So if you play some survivor and also some killer and you're looking for some good perks for killer, I think this is a good chapter to go with as well. Moving on to the killer mains, the first DLC I recommend you get is the Descend Beyond chapter. This DLC includes the killer Blight and also has the survivor Felix. Blight is a pretty tough power to master, but once you do, he's probably one of the best killers in the game. Blight's power works on tokens, and he starts out with 5 of them. You first start off the power by using a rush token, and once you're in a rush, you move really quickly, and then you go into your special interaction called the Slam, where you can slam into objects and then reuse another token to keep your high speed going. And then finally, if you see a survivor that you want to hit, you can use a lethal rush token, which charges you forward and allows you to hit the survivor. So he's a very high mobility and high mechanically demanding killer. Survivors basically won't ever be able to run away from you because you can catch up to them so easily. He has 3 fairly decent perks. The first one being Dragon's Grip, where if you kick a gen and a survivor starts working on that gen, they become exposed. His second perk is a really underrated hex perk in Blood Favor, where whenever you injure a survivor by any means, the pallets within 32 meters of that survivor get blocked, so it's a really good anti-loop perk. And then finally, he has Undying, which is like the support hex totem. It basically gives the totem that you brought with Undying 2 lives. And just to quickly mention Felix, his 3 teachables aren't that great, but his best one is probably Built to Last, and Desperate Measures I guess is okay. So if you're getting this chapter, it really isn't for Felix. The second DLC I recommend you get is the Shattered Bloodline chapter. This DLC includes the killer Spirit and the survivor Adam. Spirit is one of the better killers in the game, and if you can get really good value out of the mind games with her, she can be really good. Her main power is Phase Walking, where when you activate it, you leave behind a husk, which is just your killer spirit frozen, and then you're invisible, and you give off a directional whisper of where you actually are. Inside this phase walk, you can't see survivors, but you can see their scratch marks and their pools of blood, and you can hear them. And you also move a little bit faster, so it's good to catch up to survivors that are really far away, and it can catch the survivors off guard in loops as well. And her 3 perks are relatively decent, but they're more so fun than anything. Spirit Fury is a fun perk that catches survivors off guard by immediately breaking a pallet that gets stunned you. Her other perk in Haunted Grounds, whenever the hex totem gets cleansed, the survivors get exposed for a minute at tier 3, so that's also fun to catch survivors off guard with an exposed. And then Rancor is a crazy fun perk that allows you to Mori a survivor if they're the obsession, and they also get the exposed status effect, so it allows you to single out one survivor in endgame really easily. And then just to quickly mention Adam, he has 3 relatively decent perks, but his main selling point is Deliverance, which is actually a really good perk now. Being able to self unhook yourself after you get a safe unhook used to be really overrated, but now with Borrowed Time being base kit and you actually having protection after your own self unhook, it's actually a pretty decent perk. He also has Diversion, where you basically throw a pebble and it gives off a noise notification at the location of the pebble that you throw. So it's nice to throw killers off guard and confuse them. It's a really funny perk. And he also has Auto Didact, which is an Altruism skill check speed bonus perk that you start your skill check slower with healing, but once you get more and more, each skill check you do gives bigger progress. So if you heal a ton of people in a trial, this is actually a pretty decent perk to speed it up. The third DLC I recommend you get is the Cursed Legacy chapter. This DLC has the killer Oni and the survivor Yui. Oni has a really big snowballing power that you start the trial off pretty slowly and you're just a basic M1 killer, but once you build up your power with your blood orb, that's when you start to get really good. You keep getting this power more and more often until the end of the trial. You're an unstoppable force. You have to actually injure survivors and keep chasing them and collect their blood orbs to then be able to have enough to activate Blood Fury. And once you do, you have two abilities within your Blood Fury called the Demon Dash and the Demon Strike. Demon Dash allows you to quickly charge through the map and go really quick, and if you see a survivor, you can pounce down on them and it insta kills them as if they were exposed. Demon Strike is kind of similar to the ending of the Demon Dash, where you slam down on a survivor and it's basically the exposed status effect, and you can also do this on pallets and breakable walls to break them faster. I'm gonna be honest, his three perks are really trash, so if you're gonna get this chapter, it's really only to use Oni, not his perks. They're really bad. And then just to quickly mention Yui, she has three decent perks, with her best one probably being Lucky Break. Whenever you first get injured, it suppresses your pools of blood and your scratch marks, so you become really hard to track for 60 seconds. What's really nice about this is that every second you heal another survivor, you get a second back on your Lucky Break, so if you get re-injured, you're potentially able to get this perk again. And then Any Means Necessary allows you to reset drop pallets, which is fun. And then Breakout allows survivors to wiggle out faster if you're running next to them while they're getting carried. Moving on now to the survivor slash killer mix chapters. The chapter I recommend you get if you play a little bit more killer than you do survivor is the Shattered Bloodline chapter. If you want more details on their power and their perks, go to the second chapter in the killer main section where I talked more about it. But to quickly summarize why this chapter is so good for both sides, mainly killer, is because Spirit is a really solid killer if you do master the mind games behind the phase walk, and not to mention she also has some really fun perks. And then Adam has a really good perk in Deliverance that's really fun to use. Other two perks are half decent and you can get some value out of them if you make builds around them. Now the chapter I recommend you get if you play more survivor than you do killer is the Chains of Hate DLC. If you want more details on Deathslinger's power and perks and Zarina's perks, I talked more about it in the second chapter of the survivor main section of the video. But to summarize Zarina, she's super good because she has Off the Record, which is the best non-exhaustion perk in the game. And Deathslinger, a lot of people don't really like his power, but I would probably get this more so for the perks in especially Deadman Switch, because this is probably a top 10 killer perk in the game right now in allowing you to get really easy and really good gen defense, but also getting good information out of it as well. And then just to throw this in there really quickly, if you do have an even split of survivor and killer, I would maybe get the second Resident Evil Project W chapter that just came out. This chapter includes Wesker as the killer and then the survivors Ada and Rebecca. If you want, you can pause the video and read more about Wesker's power, but I'm quickly gonna mention that he's really fun and he has a really good power, which is a really good combo to have on the killer side. And he also has three relatively decent perks that are comboed really well with other perks in the game. And then Ada doesn't really have fantastic perks in my opinion, but they can be comboed well with other survivor perks in the game. But Rebecca's three perks are much better than Ada's and are comboed really well with other survivor perks as well, and are really good on their own as well. So she's probably the survivor you would buy this chapter for. And as this chapter did just come out and it isn't on sale, it's pretty expensive. I would probably recommend waiting out until this chapter is on sale, because with the other chapters on sale, you're probably going to be able to buy 3 or 4 of the DLCs for the price DLC we get for just this one. But if you're watching this video way into the future and this chapter is on sale, I would definitely consider it. So yeah guys, that's been the video. I hope you found it helpful, and comment down below what DLC you got first or what DLC you plan on getting first after watching this video. And also let me know what your guys' favorite DLC is in all of DBD. I'd be curious to hear that as well. So yeah guys, that's been the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you're new. This has been Sharpshot, and I will see you guys in the next video.